Daniel Sports Center, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2023 Las Vegas Bowl matchup between the Northwestern Wildcats and the Utah Utes. Two teams that have had good seasons getting to this point. You got Utah 8-4 on the season. This team, maybe not quite as good of a season as many expected, but when you consider the injuries this team was having to push through this season, not a bad year for the Utes as they take on Northwestern in the Las Vegas Bowl. And Northwestern 7-5 this season. They're in a different position. This is a team that definitely exceeded expectations this season. I mean, considering all they went through this past off season, everything that happened, I would say 7-5 is a really good season for this Wildcats team, and the future is bright for Northwestern. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Utah beat Colorado 23-17 to finish out the regular season, which this team definitely they were challenged down the stretch. They did lose 3 of their last 5, and so it was good to beat Colorado to finish out the regular season, get up to 8 wins. But obviously, I feel like this team and their injury struggles kind of caught up to them later on in the season once November hit. I mean, you consider the Oregon loss and even Washington. I mean, this team also played some pretty tough teams. Oregon, Washington, both really good. Arizona, the way they turned it on in the second half of the season, really impressive as well. So for Utah, obviously not their year, but 8-4 is not a bad season, all things considered. But for Northwestern, they beat Illinois 45-43. This was a really surprising score in that. I mean, you look at the Big Ten West, most of the games this season were really defensive and low scoring. And so for Northwestern to score 45 offensively was definitely impressive there, and it brings some optimism looking at this offense. And I'll say this as well. This is a very improved team this season. You look at the first half of the year, this team did start the season 3-4. So heading into the Maryland game back in late October, it seemed as if the bowl chances were pretty much out the window for this team. But once again, winning 4 of their past 5, this team has been pretty impressive in the later parts of this season. Games will be on Saturday, the 23rd in Las Vegas. Kickoff is 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going Utah by 6.5 here, which seeing this spread at first honestly kind of surprised me. I know Utah is all around a more talented team. There's no hiding that. But when you consider the way that both teams have played down the stretch, Utah hasn't been quite as good. Northwestern has been playing their best ball in recent time. And you also consider that Utah is going to be on their 3rd-string quarterback and Luke Batari in this matchup because Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson both gone in the transfer portal. And honestly, you could say Luke Batari is this team's 4th-string quarterback because guess what? Cam Rising has been out the entire season, but I'm not counting him just because he hasn't even played this year. But you get the point. Utah being a 6.5-point favorite, it makes some sense when you look at both teams. And Utah just is the more stronger team talent-wise, but Northwestern, the way this team has played down the stretch, this game might be closer than some might think. But over-under is 41.5. FPI is going Utah 77%. So the FPI is especially going heavy on the Utes. Your bowl history, Utah is 17-8. They have lost the last 4 bowl games that they've played. They were in the Rose Bowl the last 2 years, lost to Penn State and Ohio State respectively, and then to Texas in the Alamo Bowl back in 2019. As for Northwestern, this team has actually been opposite in that they've had success in bowl season. They won in the Citrus Bowl back in 2020 against Auburn. These two teams actually met in the Holiday Bowl as well back in 2018 where Northwestern won it. And then 2017, Northwestern won in the Music City Bowl. Your stat comparison, Utah 5th in points per game, 22nd in points allowed. I mean, you look at statistically for both teams, Utah is, they're far and away the better team. This is a more complete team in Utah that finds ways to win games. And, I mean, they're really strong in the rush game. They're 26th in rush yards a game, and they're especially good against the run. They're 5th in rush defense this season. Passing game, not so much. They're 116th there, but it makes sense because, I mean, they've been having to rely on Bryson Barnes or Nate Johnson all season. And when Luke Batari was in against Colorado, only threw 61 yards. So, I mean, and it does help that he's going to have some practice time to get ready for this matchup as the starter. But obviously, that is a bit of a concern seeing how he played against the Buffaloes back in November. But you look at Northwestern, 73rd in points per game, 49th in points allowed. Not a very strong rushing team here in Northwestern. They're 120th there. They're 89th in the passing game, and then 25th against the pass and 73rd against the run. So Northwestern is kind of, I mean, they're a somewhat balanced team as well, but just on a lower level than Utah's been this season. Your recent matchups, Utah has lost 3 of their past 5. They beat Colorado by 6. Lost Arizona 18-42. That score might surprise you. Seen that at first, but once again, I feel like Arizona isn't getting enough attention. They've really played well in the later parts of the season. I think they could be a top 10 team heading into bowl season. And then Washington lost to them by a touchdown, kept it close though against a team who is currently the 2 seed in the college football playoff. Beat Arizona State 55-3, lost to Oregon 6-35 back in October. So roller coaster of a season for Utah. As for Northwestern, beat Illinois by 2. They beat Purdue by 8. Beat Wisconsin 24-10. So this defense has been impressive. Obviously, the Illinois game kind of stands out as just a strange game in that there was a lot of scoring there. But defensively, this team has been impressive multiple times this year, especially in the later parts of the season. They did lose to Iowa 10-7 in a classic Iowa game, the way the Iowa's defense can shut teams down. And then back in October, beat Maryland 33-27. So we've seen flashes of potential out of Northwestern from both the offense and the defense down the stretch. Your key points, Utah 8-4. This team is pretty much brutal everywhere but the pass game. That's a pretty good way to describe this team. Although defensively, this team has allowed a lot of points later on in this season. But when they've played teams that don't have as strong of offenses, they tend to do pretty well, which is honestly pretty good news for Utah taking on a Northwestern team that also is really not very strong offensively. And really, this has all the makings of being a pretty low-scoring game as well, when you consider these are 2 teams with just not very strong offenses. And really defensively, that's where both teams shine, I would say, as well. I mean, so for Utah, with Luke Batari looking to start, obviously this offense there's a few questionable areas. And I mean, also for Utah, this is a team that's also lost quite a few players to the transfer portal already, which is a concern. And that's something you got to look at with predicting bowl games now, as well as the transfer portal and how many players have already left, which this season has been more prevalent than ever. But you look at Northwestern, after a 3-4 start, they've won 4 of their last 5. You got momentum on Northwestern's side. Utah really doesn't have much of that. They beat Carr to finish out the regular season, but otherwise they did lose 3 of their last 5. Meanwhile, Northwestern, the way this team has played in November, this is obviously a really well-coached team as well. You consider where Northwestern was this past offseason. I mean, things were it was rough for the Wildcats only just a few months ago. And for Northwestern to be 7-5 and playing Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl is honestly extremely impressive what Northwestern has done. You got to give huge credit to this coaching staff for what they've done already with Northwestern. And once again, the future is bright for the Wildcats. I know, this past offseason was rough, but this team has found a way up to 7-5, and they've got a legit chance, I think, to win this game, and they've only gotten better. They find ways to win as well. Not every game is pretty, but they tend to find a way in just about every game. At least that's how it's been in the last month or so. But with that, let's get a prediction here for Utah and Northwestern coming up here in the Las Vegas Bowl. This one I really went back and forth on. I know Utah is a pretty heavy favorite here, but really I feel like this is a matchup that's going to be really tight and really could go either way. But I am going with the favorite. I'm going to go Utah 21-17 here. I think Utah finds a way to win this matchup, but I will say this, Northwestern, don't underestimate them in this matchup. Utah is definitely not a lock. I feel like Utah playing with their 4th string quarterback pretty much in Luke Batari already is kind of a reason for a little bit of concern for Utah. But I will say this as well. For Northwestern, yeah, they've played pretty well in the later parts of the season, but they also haven't played many good teams. Utah's had a lot stronger competition, and so for Northwestern, it's going to be challenging in this matchup. And even for Utah, whenever they've played a team with a pretty weak offense, which Northwestern has a halfway decent offense, but it's nothing special in comparison to who Utah's played, like Arizona or Washington or even Oregon. So I think Utah finds a way. It's going to be close, and it really could go either way. I'm going 51% towards Utah, so pretty much as close as it gets, I do think here. I think Northwestern, I really wouldn't be surprised one bit if they found a way to upset Utah, but I am taking the Utes in the end. I'm just more confident in Utah, but I'm taking Northwestern to cover the spread for sure. Taking the under as well. I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game when you consider both offenses and also 2 defenses that have definitely shined later on in this season. But with that, let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup, your score predictions, all of that. Definitely an interesting one coming up here in the Las Vegas Bowl. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.